Said you got a couple girls in your phone, so you better pick the right one. Said you got a couple girls in your phone, so you better pick the right one. I ain't never number one, no, I'm never number two. Hope that you're picking them right. You got everything to lose. You put it all on the line. You put it all on the line.
Good morning, beautiful people. Welcome to Criminal Justice Insider. I'm Babz Rawls-Ivy.
And I'm Jeff Grant.
And we are sponsored by the Community Foundation of Greater New Haven.
Now more than ever.
We are excited on this stormy, wintry day to have in studio with us Rollin Cook, the newly appointed Commissioner of Correction for the state of Connecticut. Welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I'm so
Great to
happy
be
that
with
you were able to come and see us so quickly.
Yeah, it's an honor to be here, and I'm glad I made it through the storm, making my way down here. So thank you so much for having me.
Is this your first full-length interview?
I think so. Well, I think I did one for Fox.
Yeah, 3-minute.
Yeah,
I saw that.
Yeah, it was just a short one, but
Yeah.
this is definitely the one that we'll probably go into more detail for sure.
Yeah,
For sure.
Yeah, we've been getting cards,
so
letters.
no pressure. Yeah, I feel it. I feel it.
Yeah, you know, this will be the definitive interview.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I understand.
Hard hitting.
No pressure, Babz. Thanks.
We want an
Thanks.
Emmy for this.
Yeah.
So how are you? And welcome to Connecticut.
Thank you. I'm doing well. I miss my family. I'm looking forward to getting them here.
Oh yeah.
Got a daughter that's trying to finish high school. She's only a junior, so she may end up staying with my son. But just that's the only part I miss because the Connecticut's been beautiful. The people have been honestly so welcoming.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't ask for anything better. So it's exciting time for me.
Yeah. Lovely.
Oh, great. So how many kids do you have?
I have 3 kids.
Mhm.
I have 2 sons. My oldest boy has high functioning autism. And he's awesome to say the least. And then we have our daughter at 17, and
I have a 17-year-old.
yeah.
God
So
bless you. Let's hold hands and pray.
yes, we definitely need that. That's why I'm saying I'm not gonna if she wants to stay there in Utah.
You're like,
Yeah.
listen, that's
I'm
a
not-
good idea.
That's right. I'm not telling my son what you're inheriting, but no, it's but I love him very much, and that's just been the hardest part is just not having him around. You know, you can go to restaurants and stuff by yourself, but it's just a little different.
Yeah.
When you're on your own. But again, I couldn't pass up this opportunity. There's just no way.
Are you from Utah?
Born and raised there.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, so spent my whole 51 years there, and I get lost here so easy. I took it for granted. I could go anywhere in Utah just about and not even think about where I was driving. Here, I'm Mr. GPS.
Yeah.
I'm off, and I'm the one that everyone's honking at. So if you honked at me on the way here, I'm sorry.
You don't have your official plates yet?
No, I don't know if I have official plates, but they it doesn't really matter when you don't know where you're going. And I'm cutting people off.
When they say Commissioner of Corrections, they'll stop honking.
Yeah,
Listen,
I guess
2
so.
hours in any direction, you'll be in another state. So
Yes,
That's true.
I've noticed that. I'm looking forward to that too.
you're like, oh my God, I'm in Rhode Island. Oh my God, I'm in Massachusetts. Oh, I'm in New York.
I'm doing that just for each city I go into. I'll be
Yeah,
honest.
exactly.
Yeah.
So-
There's so many cities and
Yeah.
stuff. So
Okay, well, welcome.
thank you.
So let's get to it. So tell us why you chose this job.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Well, if I went all the way back to corrections, I know Babz, corrections has changed so much.
Mhm.
I hired in '89.
Mm-hmm.
I came in as a correctional officer and worked my way up through the ranks and stuff. And I was ready at that point. I won't go into the entire process, but about 7-8 months ago, I felt like I was kind of near where Scott was, where I was saying, you know what, I've done this. I'd spent 5 years as the executive director for the Department of Corrections, and we'd done a lot of different work and stuff there. And I thought, it's time for me to step away and to let someone else do this. The reason I came to Connecticut is because of the things that you're doing. It's because of the things, for example, that I feel so much pressure about keeping that momentum going.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The thing that I've just been impressed with, and we've watched it from afar. You know, Scott would come to the conferences and talk with us and say, "Here's the things we're doing." I wanted to be part of that. So when when there started to be some inquiry from there was a few from other states and things as the elections took place.
Mm-hmm.
And I never really thought of Connecticut until I got that call, and because I didn't know Scott was leaving.
Yeah.
And just knowing the different things that were going on, I just couldn't pass it up. Utah's a very conservative state, and we made some great strides there. But the thing I've noticed about Connecticut is just the different nonprofits involved, and just from the ACLU, the NAACP, the entire community. Everyone wants to be part of the change and part of the reform.
That's true.
And it was really pretty easy that way. The tough part, again, is just from a family standpoint, that's a long ways to go. But it's just the opportunity of a lifetime to be involved in that kind of reform.
So, Babz, do you know how we got the commissioner on the show?
Mm-mm.
The day that it was announced in the paper, maybe the minute it was announced online, I found the commissioner on Facebook. And I instant messaged him right away.
And no pressure.
I said right away, welcome to Connecticut. Let me tell you about our show. I don't think it took you 60 seconds to respond. And that's amazing. That's amazing that you were, and since you've been that responsive.
Well, I think that just comes from, that's the way it should be.
Yeah.
When you get hired to do these types of jobs, you're here to serve the people. And you don't get these opportunities very often. And so, I also try to preach that with my leadership team, that if we have someone from the public that wants to answer, or that needs some answers or needs some assistance, that's what we're there for. That's who we serve. We serve the community. So, and to know, again, to have that opportunity and to see what was going on, pretty easy to answer. In fact, I watched the first one right after, and Babz was giving us crap for Utah being so white. And, you're right, Babz.
Hashtag Utah so white.
Yeah, and it's not just the snow. Yeah. So absolutely, I look forward to that.
Well, you have the reputation of being a responder. The ACLU out there in Utah says really good things, which is high praise because they don't mess around.
No,
and
they don't.
And they get at you if you are unresponsive, abusing rights, and all this other kind of stuff. Yeah. And they gave you high praise, and the community gave you high praise because you came to that job with a real sense of incarcerated people and their families as humans.
Absolutely. And that may come just from, I teach a lot of leadership classes. That comes from my family. Both my parents really come from absolutely nothing. There's a picture of my father I have that's by my bedside, where he's in basically a one-room shack, and it's got a dirt floor. And he's with his father, who's holding a rabbit. And he talks about that was their meal for the next 2 to 3 days. And when my parents were raising me, they were always talking to me about the importance of being able to give back to the community. In so many ways, and being grateful for the things we have. We don't get to choose who we're born to, or what situations we were born into, and that was constantly put into my head, and I'm grateful for that today, because I understand. Again, we're sitting here talking about an opportunity I've had to be able to come to Connecticut. There's a lot of people that aren't even able to leave their small house or their city or whatever, and so I just feel like it's an obligation to do that, and to be able to give back in some way. So. Plus, it makes you feel good when you're doing the right things, So
even from those kind of beginnings, character was instilled in you right away, and I think that that's something that is missing in a lot of families and a lot of education, and core values don't seem to be as present as maybe they were 100 years ago or 50 years ago.
Maybe so. I think, though, I see a lot of people that want to be part of that, or to provide that to some people. In other words, we're already meeting with the NAACP. And
I was going to ask you, because Connecticut, you're coming outside of Utah. It's very black.
Yes.
And you're going to deal with black. And Connecticut is a very political state, and each city and town is political, none more than New Haven, that is quite political. And you're going to have all these people coming at you. So, what is your experience? What is your thoughts around how you're going to entertain all these invested entities in corrections.
Yeah.
Well, to me, Babz, it's just what I did in Utah. It's the same thing. You talked about how I engaged the ACLU. We've already done that here. The only way I know is just to meet with them and to involve them and make them part of the solution and let me be part of the solution as well. As I mentioned, we met with the NAACP. There's some mentors right there. In fact, they've in one of the meetings we had, they brought a couple of folks that had been incarcerated a good part of their life, and there's the mentors right there. Sometimes we learn, character's not just something you're born with. To me, character is something that you learn along the way. Sometimes, and it usually comes from our failures or our challenges and stuff like that. So you're right. There's a lot of things we're missing in today's world, but there's also a lot of people out there that can add a lot of value and be mentors for those folks that maybe didn't have it as much. So Babz, when you ask, where am I going to get it? I'm going to get it from everybody else around me. I'm just hopefully a cog that can help this thing go. I mean, we obviously have the population that we can help the most, and but I've never done anything myself. If and I don't try to do things that way. To me, it's about collaboration. It's about bringing the people that have experienced it, for example, who have been incarcerated, get them involved in what those solutions are. The same goes for the people that I work with, or our employees. They should be involved in the solutions and stuff as well, and helping them be part of that solution. So that's what I believe anyway.
Well, you're already on the national stage here. I mean, there's a lot of media here, and between New York and Boston and Connecticut alone, and our NAACP just won that verdict for the gerrymandering. Against gerrymandering. So that's a national campaign, and Smart Justice for ACLU is doing a great job here, and Unlock the Vote is and medication assisted treatment bill, the public hearing is Monday night. I mean, you got a lot of work on your hands.
We do. We have a lot of work on our hands, but we also have, you just mentioned all the people that will be there with us. Yesterday the ACLU came in and wanted to film me in regards to, I think it's House Bill 6921, about the Anti-Discrimination Legislation.
Oh yeah.
We're all about that. I mean, how great would that be for us to knock down some of those barriers and stuff that have been in place? So Jeff, I just don't go at it alone.
Yeah, they had a crowd there earlier in the week, didn't they?
They
had to find a new room.
Yeah, those blue shirts are really starting to show up there. So, but again, I just believe it's engaging those folks and being part of the solution. And you don't always agree on everything. But you're really, oftentimes, what you realize, when Babz is talking about engage the ACLU, you're really working towards the same goals ultimately. Maybe we weren't many, many years ago in corrections. Maybe it was adversarial, but the worst thing you can do in these situations is to just push people away. It's about, tell me what your thoughts are and what can we do to make things better. And you guys have been doing it here in Connecticut, so it must be working.
And one of the things I liked about your confirmation hearing, it was interesting to watch Len Fasano kind of, I don't know if he flipped around. I just think he was asking good questions, but I think that people in the state understand that it's a very complex mechanism that you're now in charge of, and that it's hard to judge on any particular thing. For example, same things that happen in Utah. People die in prison. People get hurt in prison. People get sick in prison. I mean, it's a big, complicated organism, and it's hard to wrap your arms around all of it at one time.
It is. I think the tough part about that, and this is something I learned very quick. We've sort of joked about coming from Utah, but the people here don't know me. And when I was in Utah, it's just like I've watched the previous podcasts and stuff that you guys put on with Scott. Everyone knew Scott. I mean, you can just feel the love for him. When I get here, I'm thinking, and when I was going through the hearing and stuff, is nobody knows what your history is. So it did give me the chance to be able to explain some of that. But the other thing is that you hope that you see what do we do after these problems are presented to us. Yes, that was one of the most devastating things we started to see in Utah, and it was across the state, was the deaths that were were being reported in the data, and what I was proud to see, we didn't talk about it in that hearing, but was people come together. Okay, what do we got to do to fix this? But when it comes to deaths, they're tragic, and one of the deaths that we had there that we talked a little bit about was a person that starved themselves to death. But what you don't see was things that were going on behind the scenes, and the correctional officers that were worried about this particular inmate at the time, and we didn't have the legislation to be able to force feed him. And we were talking about that, and then when you lose a life like that, it's devastating for everybody there. And so, when it comes to those hearings, all you can really do is try to be. I don't know how to be anything else but myself.
Yeah.
But it was definitely a challenging time since I've been here in Connecticut in that regard, and trying to clear up a lot of the allegations, because people didn't really understand also how the system works in Utah. They thought that I was over all the jails and all that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, it's just that opportunity to be able to answer the questions and talk about what you've done to make it better.
Well, you definitely kept it real, that's for sure. And I think everybody appreciated that.
So talk a little bit about, Connecticut has a declining prison population. We've closed some facilities, closed some juvenile facilities. Talk a little bit about your sense of what role you think you could play in the conversation around reentry. Because people who come to jail rarely stay for all of their lives. At some point, they're going to get out. And you don't want them to come back.
Right.
So what do you think, as coming into this new world of, and everybody's talking about reentry, what are your thoughts on that?
There's a couple things that have stood out to me. I mean, and as we've mentioned, Connecticut's making great progress, but I still think we have a lot of work. The way we can continue to build upon reentry, we still got a lot of work to do in regards to homelessness. We still have a lot of work in regards to education and job development. That seems to be, we spend a lot of time, for example, and there's a lot of great things. I mean, the True Unit is awesome, and we're even looking to expand that. But we need to spend some time, and it isn't just a corrections problem. It's really a social justice problem. When we're not able to find places for these folks to live, you can provide them all the education, all the treatment, all the employment. But if they don't have a place to live when they get out, they're going to fail. So when we're talking about reentry, we still have some work to do on the outside as well. In fact, when we talk about the True Unit, the thing that makes the True Unit very different than, we started something similar in Utah under my administration. The thing that's different about Connecticut's model really is the mentoring piece. To have, and what people miss about that, I'll jump around a lot, you guys. Sorry,
No,
I
feel
may be
free.
really
No, you're doing
bad.
great.
It's all right.
But the thing about that is that also inspires those that are the lifers that are providing that sort of mentoring. Before, what else do they have to look forward to? The impact they can have on those people's lives. The impact it's having on the officers that get to work in there. But the other things we can do in regards to reentry that we need to build upon, and this was some of the discussions again we were having the other day with Scott Isdale, is that we need to get mentors on the outside. Because that's where it's hard. When you're in a controlled environment in a correctional facility, there's less access to a lot of the challenges that they faced on the outside, and the pressures and stuff. We've got to make sure that we've got the mentors on the outside to help us with that. And again, the anti-discrimination laws and things that can help us find some housing for these folks. Because again, if you've got a place to go home, then you got a place to go home after you get done working. You got a place to study. You got a sense of security. So there's still a lot of work ahead in that area.
Yeah, there's no doubt a lot of this is financial. We discussed that. We were discussing that before the program started, and we have a new secretary of OPM, a new undersecretary of criminal justice planning and policy at OPM. It feels like maybe, Babz, I don't know if you knew this, but probably 3/4 of the executive directors of criminal justice have turned nonprofits in the state have turned over in the last. So there's a lot of new faces.
I know, because some of them have courted me. I was like, I don't want that job.
So
Come on over.
So there may not be a lot of people with institutional memory.
Right.
And everyone's kind of in this new administration. How are you mediating that? How are you working your way through and meeting people and forming the right alliances so that the right money comes into the Department of Corrections?
Well, I think we talked about it already. The one thing you need to know from my standpoint is I kept a lot of Scott's leadership right in place. So from my standpoint, I have a lot of institutional knowledge, including sitting to my left here.
We do have Karen Martucci in the studio today.
Yes, Tooch is in the building. So, that's how we begin. And then you just meet with them. I spoke I had a whole week on the job, and I was already speaking on a housing panel. And when we got off of that,
Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah. When we got off of that panel, though, I was blown away at the number of people that came up and said, "Hey, we need to meet with you." And that's what we've been doing.
Yeah.
For this first, I think this is my 7th week here, has been nonstop.
Yeah.
So,
and just starting to build those relationships.
did you have women prisons in Utah? Are there women's prisons?
Yeah, so we do, but everything is on. So Utah's a little bit different in the way that we manage the prisons is that it's all on one campus. So we had 4,000 inmates on one campus.
Wow.
But you have all these different buildings
Yeah, sure.
and stuff
Okay.
that are there. And one of the cool things, though, that you bring that up is Utah is building a new correctional facility, they call it, but it's really a campus. And to be involved in that, you get to design that will help you with the reforms. For example, having visiting areas where the moms, families, their children can come in and visit with them and all those kind of things. Got to do a lot part of that. So, but it's all on one campus. And so we manage it accordingly. It's a little bit different than many of the states.
Have you been to York yet and seen the?
Yes. Yeah. I've already been to York. I haven't got to every single one of them. Again, it goes back to your statement that you made a little bit earlier. What are you doing? I've been in so many meetings, and some of it's last minute or so I haven't been able to get to each one of them.
Yeah,
but
sure.
yes, we got to York. I got to see some of those the things going on there, the dog program and stuff like that. So
the York Correctional Prison has been very innovative on its own in doing things and allowing for things to come into the prison to sort of better women's lives and prepare them. And so I was just curious to see where you stood with that, because women in women prisons have different needs than men in men prisons.
Absolutely. So that's gender responsive programming and training and things like that. That again, when you ask where I stand, I'm all about it. We brought that same type of programming to our women's facilities there in Utah, and it's important for us to remember that. In fact, they were talking about, or at least I was at a couple of different conferences and stuff where they were talking about the amount of trauma that women go through throughout their life, and it even changes the way that we train our correctional officers that work with them. And I often use this analogy. For years, I coached my sons in sports, and there's a 10-year gap between my sons and my daughter. When I started even coaching my daughter's teams, the approach to coaching them was completely different.
Sure.
Very different. I learned very quick that all the hollering and whistling and all that kind of stuff was not going to get me anywhere. And I use that analogy, but it's serious. It's important for us to realize that. I think we also need to be looking at that in regards to, and they're starting to see a little bit of this in regards to different races as well. You know, Ohio, the state of Ohio has a program through their parole division that is for African American males that are supervised by African American males, that also incorporates the culture and where they live and the different things and who they are, and that's been very successful. So there's a lot of those types of things that are going on. It boils down to funding and where can you get it and where's your help going to come from. But there's a lot of opportunities for those types of things.
Well, we've had a lot of change recently, especially as to women's issues. A lot of advocacy, some groundbreaking legislation regarding, say, dual arrests for domestic violence complaints and things like that.
And no longer chaining women during pregnancy, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, those days are long gone.
But some states still do it though.
I know, but what I'm telling you is that from my standpoint and from where I came from in Utah, it was a troubling time for sure. And we see that though, Babz. I mean, working in corrections sometimes, and when you've done it for 30 years, all of a sudden there'll be some sort of change that will occur, and you go, what were we doing? You know, you don't really realize that you're sort of oftentimes stuck in the way that you were trained, the people that came before you.
Yeah.
You know, there's a reason why my nose is crooked, you guys. I mean, when I hired in, everything was about force. You'd enter cells and take people down. Now when we're looking to hire people, we look, you know, for people that can problem solve, that can communicate, that can lead, that it's not about forcing someone, but leading them and coaching them and so on. So there's just been a lot of changes, thank goodness. But sometimes it is a slap in the face. Like, what in the heck were we thinking? The same goes with restrictive housing. The changes that were made there, forever, as we sat in, from a national perspective with the other commissioners when Scott was there, we were all talking about these changes we need to make. We really couldn't explain a lot of it away, you know. And then I can even say, just from spending time alone in an apartment without my family, just this little bit of time, and that may seem, oh, geez, really? Yeah, just that little bit of time where you're isolated from everybody. You can imagine what it would be like in a cell. And so.
Oh no, I do know. So.
Yes, I
you can call Babz and I up. We'll bring a pizza over if you want.
All right. Yeah, I love that.
So talk a little bit about the men and women who are going to be working under you and under your leadership. And I'm sure, and I don't know because no one spoke to me, but there must be some anxiety about the new guy that's coming in. And with newness comes change. I mean, there'll be things that you will change and you may get pushback on. Talk a little bit about your concern or care for the men and women who will be serving under you.
Yeah, and who stayed on your leadership team? And we know Monica's left.
Right.
So who's in that direct team now? And have you hired new people yet?
Yeah. So we've sort of been in a holding pattern to make things official until my confirmation takes place.
Yeah.
But I've already kept in place. Scott had acting Deputy Commissioner Angel Quiros, who's overseeing a lot of the operations side. I kept on Deputy Commissioner Cheryl Sepelak. And as we mentioned, Karen. So that's my closest group. Also, my legal advisor, as well as the same one that Scott had. So I've kept that same team in place. A lot of that came from, to be honest, from Scott and I talking on the phone prior, and then meetings that we had as soon as I arrived. So I wanted to put that team together. Going back to talk to specifically what Babz was questioning about. So Babz, you kind of hit on something that if there's anything I've done a lot of is or at least stuff that I like to do, is also staff wellness. And I think it's important for you to understand, Babz. I think it's that the way that we treat our employees is the way that they're going to treat the people that they supervise. And that's not different for any business. That it's not something that just comes with corrections. It comes with the way that you're looking at what things can I do to help the correction staff do their job. When we're asking them, for example, you need to communicate more. You need to allow these folks out of their cells more. Well, that requires training. That requires resources. For example, if you look at the True Unit, what's really cool about that? If you ask the officers, there was officers in there that have told me, and they were tired of doing this job. They hated going to work. Now all of a sudden they're working in that unit. They have something that of value that provides them, hey, I'm giving back in a way and helping these folks become better. We'll be investing a lot in leadership training. I believe in servant and transformational leadership, so there has to be some changes along those lines. In fact, my first meeting with some of our leadership team, the wardens and stuff, I was talking about there was a situation years ago that I had a leader call me, and I was over the transition of a new facility. And he said, and he was a higher ranking person than me, and he called me on the phone and said, I understand you're assigning the parking slots to the new facility we're building, and I just want to make sure that you understand that I'm the one that's been in here the longest, and I expect to be closest to the door. Well, he obviously didn't know me very well. So that was the worst thing you could do. So I pulled the team together that was deciding that, and I said, okay, put every one of those captains' names in a hat and start pulling them out.
Whoa.
And I said, if that captain's name comes out, we're going to throw it back in the hat. Well, it didn't come out until about the 4th. And I got a phone call after we put those signs up from the sheriff, and he said, Roland, I think that's pretty funny, but I think you need to move that sign over there. And I told that story to our leadership here, and I said, like, I had a parking spot at each one of the facilities. And, you guys, I'm only going to, even if I go, I'm going to be there like once every couple months, 3 months. And my parking spot's the first one. And I said, guys, I don't need that parking spot. I can walk. Before we got out of that meeting, you guys, they had removed all those signs from everybody. So they're trying to get used to it too. But I what I'll say is,
we've both been to prison. I can tell you we're used to a lot. We're used to a lot of signs being removed.
Yeah, I'm sure. So I'm really the one that's got to sort of take a look. I've only been here 7 or 8 weeks. I've been extremely impressed with the leadership.
Yeah.
They're obviously progressive under Scott's leadership, and so we hope to continue to build on that.
Have you met with the governor?
Yes, I've met with the governor.
Because he's new too. I mean, he's new, and
everybody's new.
He's so busy, and I've also met with the chief of staff, Ryan Drazowitz, and Paul Mounds has really been my the person that I've turned to the most. He's kind of been the one that's directed me where to go on different things. But very impressed with them. And again, it's been all about what they told me during the interviews and stuff is maintaining that momentum. And helping them find new and innovative ways that we can make things better.
We went to one of those conferences in Cheshire that Scott. I can't remember exactly what the who in the government was running it, but it was certainly Scott was running it. And so they introduced us to the True Unit and a lot of the different facilities. And I think people would be shocked that the amount of humanity in there and the amount of good concerned people, staff, the interaction between the teachers and the mentors and the inmates and the correction officers. It was clear that it was a community, it was a team, and it wasn't limited just to correctional staff.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I guess one of the things when I walked in there, the thing that was impactful to me and was one, the humanity, but to watch the interactions between the staff and the mentors and also those that are there preparing for their reentry. It was different than anything I'd really seen. And to me, that's where that difference is. That also the people that are providing the services. If there was one thing I could change though, and when we took Governor Lamont on the tour of the True Unit, was that it would be great if we weren't using cells though for the rooms that provide that have the carpet on the floor where they can go and sort of time themselves out and find some peace.
Yeah.
Or the rooms, or we're using a cell for programming, or we're using a cell. I mean, I'm glad we're not using a cell to put people in, but how great would it be to have the right type of facility to be able for people to go to a room that's specifically designed for the yoga or the time to find your peace, or they turned to a cell where they can go in and express themselves with chalk. Did you see that? There's a room like that. Well, how great would that be that it wasn't a cell? And I was talking to the governor about that a little bit, that it's still a cell, and how great it would be to have a building that has those rooms and things available to be able to enhance that. But you're right, there's a different feeling, and the thing is, we need more of that.
So do you have a plan to go over to Germany or Norway like your predecessor did, and see kind of the progressive things they're doing over there?
Man, it's almost like you're reading my mind. So yes, I already got the phone call from Vera, and I'd worked with the Vera Institute as part of Utah when we were doing restricted housing and stuff. And yes, so they've already contacted me, so I get to go in May.
Wow.
And we're going to take, I think there's 4 different folks from our department that are going to get to go. And in fact, one of them's the warden over the True Unit. So that's a great opportunity for him. So, and those folks will be involved in all the different things that we'll be doing over the next several years. So yeah, we get to go to Germany and Norway to see what they're doing. So I'm very excited about that, obviously.
Yeah. We've been hearing a lot about how community corrections is going to change over the long term, and the concept of how we incarcerate people and put families together and put them on work releases and put them on keep them in the community is kind of a long-range thinking. What's your thinking about that?
Well, I think we've kind of talked about it today. Everything that what's interesting to me is there's not a lot of new concepts. These are things that we talk about that have affected our lives all along, as we know the importance of family, right? Having supportive family members makes all the difference in your life. Having opportunities to go to school affects your ability to find better paying jobs and be able to provide for your family. Making sure that they've got the right types of jobs. I think that you're going to continue to see, and I hope that we continue to move in that direction, where the community corrections piece matches the types of things that we're doing inside, and there's more of a bridge there. I think there's plenty of things that we're doing, but I think there's a whole lot more work to do, and it comes from, though, we're making progress. When you have legislation that's getting rid of some of those barriers that have been put in place, that's going to change the landscape in and of itself. What is that going to exactly look like? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I sure am excited to be part of that solution.
So before we go, Rollin, talk to me about your personal heroes and how do you take them in your spirit? How do you move forward with them? And what do they give you for this job?
Wow. So I do a lot of that kind of soul searching all the time, Babz. So I'm going to try and not, it's almost like you're pushing a button. Karen's watching me over here. Okay, Rollin, hold it together. So I have a lot of them. And so I'll talk about a few. So one's my son that I told you about that has high functioning autism. People told him his whole life, maybe he wasn't hearing it, but we sure were as parents, that he wouldn't be able to graduate from high school, that he wouldn't be able to basically participate in scouting, that he wouldn't have a girlfriend, he wouldn't hold a job, and so on and so forth. And he has several challenges beyond the autism and on the mental health spectrum of things. And he's an incredible kid, and he's overcome all of those and been part of and ensured. And it's never easy. Every day is a challenge, but he's overcome those. You start to look back over my history. I already told you about my parents and what they've been through. And sometimes this is a little cliche, but one of my heroes from history is Lincoln, and he came under a lot of scrutiny. People didn't like the things he did. I wish I had his patience that I've read so much about, because I don't have it when people are coming after you and when you're trying to do something that you believe is right. And the resolve to get those things done, regardless of the pains and stuff that it puts on you. I know you've seen it. Like, for example, I think it's even in the movie of Lincoln, the one that was recently done, where he looks so aged.
Yeah.
My mom the other day, and I tease, and she'll watch this podcast, because I often I refer to her as everyone loves Raymond's mom, and I'm Raymond. But she notices the wear and tear on me.
Yeah, sure.
And I even saw it when I look back over some pictures. Anyway, so that's just a couple. I could go on and on, but usually my heroes are the ones that have been fighting for the underdog, the ones that have overcome major challenges in their life. So that's a couple for me.
One of the things I think that gets lost, at least in the press, or in the bigger discussion, is that everyone thinks that we're looking for political solutions in order to solve these problems. But the truth is that, in my experience, because I've been doing this over a decade in the state, that once we kind of weave our way through and it becomes personal, there are judges who want to show mercy. There are some prosecutors who want to show mercy. And we have to give them the ammunition. We have to give them the reasons to do it and to behave like people. I mean,
absolutely. I think we do have to provide them the tools.
Yeah,
that's what I think that's missing oftentimes, is just that different things in the community, rather than just sending someone back to a facility to be housed. We're missing those types of resources. Again, it's a little bit different here in Connecticut. Remember, I'm coming from Utah, which is a non-Medicaid state. So having those resources here in Connecticut, we obviously still need a lot more. But those are the things that help. We just mentioned how the officers feel when they get to work in a true unit.
Mhm.
It's the same way. The same thing's going to happen with our parole officers when they have the opportunities to be able to make a difference and be able to find housing for them that's not nearly impossible to do. So you're right. I think it's about resources and making tools available to those folks to be able to make those decisions.
Well, being a Medicaid expansion state cuts both ways because
It does.
Because on one hand, there is medical and mental health availability for everyone when they come out of prison. On the other hand, there aren't mandated contracts anymore that are Department of Corrections, so maybe people are slipping through the cracks.
Oh, I'm sure there is, but I tell you, again, my frustration is we could have done even more in Utah if we would have had that Medicaid expansion.
Mm-hmm.
We were reducing the population by 9% over 2 years with our criminal justice reform.
Mm-hmm.
What could we have done if we would have had some resources in the community, for more resources for substance abuse and mental health? So you're right. No matter where you go, Jeff, you've got obstacles, and the key is what are you going to do to overcome them?
Yeah.
And address them in those particular areas. And of everyone in the state, I obviously have the most to learn. Mark Pelka and I have the most to learn.
Oh, he's going to be here in the fall, by the way.
Awesome.
Oh, yeah, he's going to be here.
Although, I mean, you do know that prisons provide the majority of mental health services in this country to people.
Absolutely.
And you know, there's something wrong with that.
That's
criminal.
All of us that are in corrections completely agree. There's no reasons that we should be the mental health provider for the United States. Are you kidding me? But we also have a responsibility. For a long time, we would always say that in corrections, but we do have that responsibility.
Yeah.
If they're with us, we have that responsibility.
Absolutely.
So we've got to make sure that care is continually looked at, and what can we do better? Because you can't just say, oh, well, it shouldn't belong to us. Well, it does.
Well,
so what
it
are you
does.
going to do?
But it's got to be hard for you because when things go wrong, I mean, they can go really wrong in a hurry, you'd imagine.
That's the story of corrections commissioners. I mean, that's what we will all worry about. That's why we call it the lifespan of a commissioner or an executive director is 2.5 years.
Wow.
So it is that wear and tear, you know, because there's so much negativity. Something can go wrong at any moment, and so you've got to make the impact that you can while you're in those positions and while you have that opportunity, and know that there's going to be things that go wrong. And hopefully people will understand it's not perfect.
Well, thank you for coming and talk with us. We hope you come back 6 months, 9 months in, and see how you feel.
I'll probably be grayer. I'll have more wrinkles and more gray, but thank you.
You look like Lincoln.
Yes, well, that would be awesome.
Well, we appreciate you coming so quickly and so forthright. So thank you.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
Thank you, Andrew Kaplan and
Lynn Springer.
We appreciate you listening and tuning in. Thank you, Community Foundation of Greater New Haven.
Now more than ever.
And we'll be back on the 15th with another wonderful guest to talk about these kinds of issues.
Yeah, Dieter Tejada is going to be here, and he's a young candidate for lawyer. He graduated law school, and he has a new project that he's working with the folks at NYU, and they are actually forming a bar association of formerly incarcerated people who have been admitted to the bar and who are seeking to be admitted to the bar. So that's a very cool initiative.
Okay. Well, thank you all, and we'll be back.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Love you, Babz.
Love you too, Jeff. I'm just going to play some music.
Just make sure he needs you. It's all about love. Just make sure he loves you. Hey, pay attention to your schooling, baby. These boys don't really love you. You should have dreams you pursuing, ladies. But you grow to be a sucker. Don't let nobody influence you to do what you don't want to. Think they want to see you smile, but they just want to bring you down. Hey, but I'm here to encourage you. When you fall, I'll pick you up. You're a queen in my eyes. These are more than just rhymes. It's all about love. Just make sure he loves you. It's all about love. Just make sure he loves you. make sure he loves you. It's all about love. Just make sure he loves you. It's all about love. Just make sure he needs you. It's all about love. Just make sure he loves you. Now do your thing. Do your thing. Ladies, do it. Ladies, do your thing. Do your thing. Do your thing. Do your thing. Ladies, do your thing. Whoa. It's all about love. Yeah. Just make sure you love you. Hey, where my nephews at, man? I need y'all to sing to y'all sisters for me. Matter of fact, where my son at, man? Talk to your sister, 'cause